Hey everyone, I am Tony, and welcome back to TTBurger PlayStation. You know, when a game gets a sequel, you expect it to improve on what came before. More cars, more tracks, more features, and hopefully more fun. And that's exactly what I expected when I picked up Hot Wheels Extreme Racing. After playing Hot Wheels Turbo Racing, I thought, okay, give me more Hot Wheels, give me more crazy tracks, and let's see what they can do with the sequel. But Extreme Racing decided to go in a very different direction. Instead of feeling like a straight up follow-up to Turbo Racing, this game feels much more like a Mario Kart style combat racer with Hot Wheels cars. You've got weapons, power-ups, nitro, projectiles, and plenty of ways to attack the other racers. On paper, that sounds pretty awesome. Hot Wheels cars, Mario Kart style racing, weapons. What could go wrong? Well, quite a bit actually, because after spending more time with Extreme Racing, I started realizing this isn't nearly as fun as Turbo Racing, and that's where my biggest problem with the game comes from. Turbo Racing felt like a Hot Wheels game first. Extreme Racing feels like it's trying to turn Hot Wheels into a kart racer, and honestly, I don't think it works nearly as well. It's kind of like ordering your favorite cheeseburger, and the restaurant tells you, we changed the recipe. You take one bite, and think, wait, where's the burger I actually liked? So today, we're going to talk about Hot Wheels Extreme Racing, why I think it's basically a Mario Kart style game with Hot Wheels cars, why I don't think that formula works very well here, and why I still think Turbo Racing is the better game. Let's get started. Let's get the story out of the way, because there really isn't one. You're here to race, win championships, unlock vehicles, and cause as much mayhem as possible. And honestly, that's fine. I don't need a complicated story in a Hot Wheels game. Nobody is buying this because they want some giant cinematic adventure. I want tiny toy cars, crazy tracks, big jumps, and ridiculous racing. So, no problem here. The story isn't what hurts Extreme Racing. The gameplay is, and that's where things get interesting. Now, let's talk about the gameplay, because this is where Extreme Racing takes its biggest swing. This game is not simply trying to be another Turbo Racing. It wants to be a combat racer, and if you played Mario Kart, you already know the basic idea. Race around the track, pick up weapons, use those weapons against your opponents, and try to reach the finish line first. Except instead of Mario, Luigi, Bowser, and the rest of the gang, you've got Hot Wheels cars. You've got power-ups scattered around the tracks. You've got weapons, nitro, projectiles, and other ways to mess with your opponents. And I have to admit, the idea sounds pretty good. Hot Wheels plus Mario Kart style combat racing. That sounds like it should be a winner. But the problem is, Extreme Racing doesn't execute the idea nearly as well as I think it should. For one thing, the actual racing isn't particularly exciting. The tracks can be chaotic, the cars can be difficult to control, and you're constantly dealing with weapons flying around. Instead of making the races more exciting, sometimes it just makes them more annoying. And that's where I think Turbo Racing had the advantage. Turbo Racing didn't need to turn itself into a Mario Kart clone. It already had its own identity. You had fast Hot Wheels cars, crazy tracks, stunts, power-ups, and plenty of opportunities to fly through the air. It felt like Hot Wheels. Extreme Racing feels like someone looked at Mario Kart and said, hey, what if we put Hot Wheels cars in that? And then, that's basically what we got. Now, I'm not saying copying an established formula automatically makes the game bad. There are plenty of great kart racers that borrow ideas from Mario Kart. The problem is, if you're going to borrow that formula, you need to make it fun. And that's where Extreme Racing struggles. The weapons can be entertaining. I'll give the game that. There's something satisfying about getting a weapon, seeing another car ahead of you, and thinking you're about to have a bad day. But the combat doesn't always feel as polished as it should. Sometimes you're trying to line up a shot, and the tracks throw you into a wall. Sometimes you're getting hit by weapons before you even have a chance to react. And sometimes the race turns into complete chaos, and not the fun kind of chaos, the frustrating kind. It's like playing Mario Kart, except instead of laughing when somebody gets hit by a shell, you're sitting there thinking, can I please just finish the race? And then there's the AI. These racers can be aggressive. Sometimes that's good. You want competition. You don't want the computer to just let you win. But there were plenty of moments where the AI felt more annoying than challenging. I'd finally get into first place, then another car would slam into me. I'd bounce off something, lose my momentum, and suddenly half the field would be ahead of me. That's not exactly the kind of challenge I enjoy. And then there's a collision detection. Most of the time, it's okay, but every once in a while, you barely touch something, and your car loses a ridiculous amount of speed. I'm no mechanic, but I'm pretty sure a Hot Wheels car should shouldn't need a repair shop because it touched a wall, and this is where the whole experience starts to become frustrating. The game is trying to be a combat racer, a transforming racer, and a Hot Wheels game all at the same time, and I don't think it balances those ideas very well, because yes, your vehicle can transform, you can race on land, water, and in the air. That's one of the more interesting ideas in the game. The transformation portals are different from what you normally see in a racing game. You drive through a portal, and suddenly your car changes to handle the next section. On paper, that's pretty cool, but then again, the execution isn't always great. Sometimes the transformation is fun, other times you're just trying to figure out what the game wants you to do, and that's another problem. There are so many different ideas competing for your attention, then the actual racing gets pushed into the background. And then we have the tracks. This is probably the biggest difference between extreme racing and turbo racing. Turbo racing made me feel like I was driving a Hot Wheels car on a giant toy track. Extreme racing feels like the developers wanted to build a combat racing playground, and sometimes it works. There are some cool environments, there's some interesting track layouts, and the transformations give the races something different. But the tracks can also feel cluttered. There's a lot happening. You've got weapons, opponents, transformation portals, different vehicle types, hazards, and sometimes you're just trying to figure out where you're supposed to go. And that's where I think the Mario Kart comparison really hurts the game. Mario Kart tracks are designed around the racing and the items. Extreme racing sometimes feels like the items and gimmicks are fighting the racing. You can have a good idea, but if the execution isn't fun, it doesn't matter. And that's what happened here. I kept thinking, this sounds better than it actually is. That's probably the biggest disappointment, because the concept is actually really cool. Hot Wheels cars, land, air, water, weapons, transformations. It sounds awesome, but playing it, I don't think it comes together nearly as well as it should. There are also vehicles to unlock, and that's always something I like seeing in a racing game. You win championships, unlock additional cars, and experiment with what you've earned. The problem is, there aren't nearly as many vehicles as turbo racing. That's a pretty big deal to me. Turbo racing had a huge selection of Hot Wheels cars. Extreme racing gives you only a small group of vehicles, and when you're playing a game based around Hot Wheels, that's disappointing. I want to see more cars. I want to unlock more cars. I want to have a reason to keep playing because there's another vehicle waiting for me. Instead, you can unlock the available vehicles fairly quickly, and once you've seen most of the game has to offer, the motivation starts disappearing. The progression isn't terrible, it's just not nearly as satisfying as turbo racing, and again, turbo racing wins. Now, let's talk about the graphics. And honestly, Extreme Racing looks pretty good for a PlayStation game. The cars are colorful, the environments have personality, and there's plenty happening on screen. The Hot Wheels cars still look like Hot Wheels cars, and that's important, because this game doesn't try to make them realistic. They're toy cars, and the game embraces that. The transformations are also visually interesting. Seeing the car change for land, water, or air is pretty cool. The environments are more elaborate than Turbo Racing's in some ways. But there's also a lot happening, and sometimes it gets visually cluttered. You're watching your car, watching the other racers, looking for weapons, trying to see where the tracks go, and dealing with all the other stuff happening around you. So, the graphics aren't bad. They're actually one of the better parts of the game. But again, the game seems to have the same problem everywhere. It keeps adding more instead of making the basic experience better. Now, let's talk about the sound. The soundtrack is decent. The music fits the action. The engines sound good. The weapons have some impact, and the crashes sound satisfying. But I still prefer Turbo Racing soundtrack. That game had a much more memorable licensed soundtrack, including artists like Primus, Metallica, the Reverend Horton Heat, and Mixmaster Mike. Extreme Racing's music isn't terrible, it's just not something I walked away remembering. And once again, Turbo Racing wins. Now that we got all the details for Hot Wheels Extreme Racing, it's time now to go to our TTBurger The Goods and the Not So Goods to give this game a score. For the TTBurger The Goods, fun idea combining Hot Wheels and combat racing, land, water, and air transformations, colorful Hot Wheels presentation, easy to learn controls, some interesting track designs, and weapons can be fun when they work. For the TTBurger The Not So Goods, feels like a Mario Kart style clone with Hot Wheels cars. The combat racing formula isn't executed very well. Aggressive AI can become frustrating. Collision detection can become inconsistent. Tracks can become chaotic and cluttered. Too few Hot Wheels cars compared to Turbo Racing. Some vehicles feel better than others. Transformations can be more gimmicky than fun. Soundtrack isn't as memorable as Turbo Racing. Doesn't have the same charm or personality as Turbo Racing. You know, after replaying Hot Wheels Extreme Racing, I understand what the developers were trying to do, and I actually think the basic idea is pretty interesting. Hot Wheels, combat racing, weapons, transforming vehicles, land, water, air. There's a lot of potential here, but I don't think the game reaches that potential, and that's the biggest problem for me, is that I kept comparing it to Turbo Racing, and Turbo Racing wins. Turbo Racing felt like Hot Wheels. Extreme Racing feels more like a Mario Kart style combat racer that happens to have Hot Wheels cars. If the racing itself was fantastic, I could forgive that, but it isn't. The weapons can be fun, but they can also be frustrating. The tracks can be interesting, but they can also become chaotic. The transformations are a cool idea, but they don't always make the racing better. And limited number of cars is especially disappointing. When you're making a Hot Wheels game, I want a lot of Hot Wheels cars. That's part of the fun. Turbo Racing understood that. Extreme Racing doesn't give you nearly enough, and that's probably why I kept thinking, why am I playing this instead of Turbo Racing? That's not something a sequel wants you thinking. It's like going to a restaurant, ordering a cheeseburger, and getting something that technically is still a burger, but doesn't taste anything like the one you've actually wanted. You can eat it, you can finish it, but you're still thinking about the other burger. And that's Extreme Racing for me. It's not completely terrible, there are things I like. There are some good ideas, and I can appreciate that ATOD and HotGen try to do something different, rather than simply making Turbo Racing again. The game was published by THQ, but different doesn't automatically mean better. And in this case, I think the changes hurt more than they helped. Turbo Racing was developed by Stormfront Studios and published by Electronic Arts, and for me, it remains the better Hot Wheels racing game. Extreme Racing had the potential to be a really fun Mario Kart style Hot Wheels game. Instead, it feels like a decent idea that wasn't executed nearly as well as it could have been, and that's why my score is going down. So, after everything I've talked about today, I'm giving Hot Wheels Extreme Racing 5.5 out of 10. I think that's a much more honest score. There are some good ideas here. The transformations are interesting, the combat can be fun, the graphics are colorful, and the controls are easy to pick up. But the problems outweigh the positives. The Mario Kart style combat racing doesn't work as well as I wanted. The AI can be frustrating, the collision detection can be annoying, the tracks can become chaotic, there aren't nearly enough Hot Wheels cars, and more importantly, I simply don't think it's as much fun as Turbo Racing. Turbo Racing made me want to keep playing. Extreme Racing made me want to go back and play Turbo Racing. That pretty much says everything. 5.5 out of 10. Not completely terrible, but definitely not the Hot Wheels sequel I was hoping for. Well, that wraps up today's review, and now we've officially finished our look at these two Hot Wheels games. After playing both, I'm still going with Turbo Racing. It has more cars, a better soundtrack, more personality, and more for me. It's simply more fun. Extreme Racing tried something different. I respect that, but I don't think the Mario Kart style direction worked nearly as well as it could have. If you've played both games, I'd love to know which one you prefer, Turbo Racing or Extreme Racing. Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the review, be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and thank you all so much for watching. I'm Tony from TTBurger PlayStation, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care everyone, and remember, keep your car on the track, keep your cheeseburger off the windshield, and don't put ketchup in the engine. I'll see you next time.